Matt, my editor, really didn't want me to do this video, and to be honest, neither did I, because this is my hair now.
I'll see if I can change his mind.
I've gone down the CIA hole and it makes the Pit and Batman look like a shell sand pit for kids. There's no way out of that. Look at my hair.
No. Too many red pills.
My videos used to make sense! There's no going back. I've taken the red pill of the Matrix. Do not read this book. Even the title's 100 times more badass than anything Bane ever said.
Killing Hope.
And definitely don't do this combo. This is the grass and beer for media consumption. Do not read Killing Hope and then watch Stephen Colbert. Here's a direct quote from Stephen Colbert that I had to voice because of CBS. Thank you very much, copyright claim. Nature abhors a vacuum, and if we are not involved in international conflicts or trying to quell international conflicts, certainly the Russians and the Chinese will fill that vacuum, and we will step away from the world stage in a significant way that might destabilize the world, because the United States, however flawed, is a force for good in the world, in my opinion. I can't wear this wig anymore, it's too itchy. I got a haircut. Sorry to chuck a Steven Crowder.
Wouldn't be the first time.
But I think it's important to define what you're talking about. Did he steal Jerry Seinfeld's voice box, cram it down a woodpecker's mouth, and then swallow the woodpecker? Define! I've looked up good in the dictionary. It's not defined as a nation that masterminds coups and genocides so Baskin and Robbins can sell more ice cream. Probably some fatties watching this would disagree, thinking, Mr. Tosser, is life worth living if you don't have a flavour for each day of the month? If you watch Stephen Colbert consistently, you will conclude that he thinks that the biggest problem on Earth is that the Russians made some memes of Hillary Clinton going, she's a donkey, yes? Weapons of mass destruction. That's why I should just be renamed whining about Russia today, constantly going on about how bad it is to meddle in elections. But when the US didn't just meddle in an election, straight out bought the Russian election after the Soviet collapse. According to Colbert, America had good intentions. No, this is serious. No more Simpsons references. Iron helps us play. No. Seriously? That is enough Simpsons quotes. Now, in the words of former President Ike Eisenhower, let's get busy. To transition from a Soviet economy to a mixed market economy, which is what we have, now you wouldn't know, little parking meters in the city, little robot Stalins, all of them. To safely do that, it'd take about a decade. The Yanks forced the Russians to do it in 150 days. Jesus. I don't think I could piss in a urinal in 150 days if someone's standing next to me. Yet Yeltsin had Clinton breathing down his neck the entire time asking, you done yet, friend? To give you an idea of just how catastrophic that is, you know when you hear in the news, the Reserve Bank is concerned that GDP growth will be less than 1% this financial quarter? This was Russia's news. Last night the economy did this. It halved. The GDP halved. Why? So they could watch Rocky IV? I mean, it's a good film, but is it worth half a nation's wealth? This is how it happened. The US government, switching it up. They discovered that campaign spending was limited to $3 million. So hearing that, the Yanks gave Boris Yeltsin $3 million. They then apparently watched the English Premier League and thought, oh, that's how you win, cheating. And gave him $1,997,000,000 more than that. $2 billion. Could you imagine if you were running for mayor and your opponent said, oh, so you're putting up some posters, eh? That's nice, yeah. I think I'm going to buy Channel 10 and the Air Force as well. Make them right in the sky, the mayor is unfair everywhere on Earth. That'll be my poster, the sky. And that's not even the scariest part. That means that Boris Yeltsin had 666 times more money than his opponents. I'm sorry, the wig's coming back on. Think about it, Nyan. Then, just in case the advantage of having the mark of the devil on your side wasn't enough, the US then forced the IMF to offer Boris Yeltsin a $10 billion loan. Housewives on Oprah wet themselves when they get a free book. If I was given $10 billion, I'd astral project to the White House and say, Mr. Clinton, I'd just like to shake your hand. At which point Bill Clinton told Boris Yeltsin's soul, that's not all, my Eastern friend. You also get another $40 billion. If anything's going to suck your soul back into your body, it's that. So quick tally. His opponent, that was way in the lead, $3 million. Boris Yeltsin, $52 billion. I mean, even if you're one of those people that thinks that money doesn't have an impact on the way people vote. Come on! Yeltsin then implemented a rapid privatization scheme in Russia, and some things went down, like male life expectancy, by almost 10 years, 65 years to 57. Could you imagine if that happened in Australia? Who would be left to ask questions on Q&A? The number of people living in poverty went from 14 million in 1989 to 147 million in 1998. Due to the privatization of medical facilities, 3 million Russians died from preventable causes that would have been treated in the former Soviet Union. And I know at this point, there's going to be a bunch of comments smugly saying, mentions 3 million American deaths, doesn't mention 20 million deaths under Stalin. Cry laugh emoji. Are people who use cry laugh emojis truly the intellectual titans of discourse? Well, first off, fuck breath, you do realise there's more ways to govern a society than George Bush Sr.'s and Stalin's. Gorbachev had a different idea. Even Jeffrey Sachs, the guy who wrote the blueprint for Russia's rapid privatization, was shocked at just how malicious the United States was. And can you imagine just how shocking the United States would have to be to have shocked Jeffrey Sachs? His book was called Shock Therapy. Force for Good. The US decimated Soviet living standards. Soviet living standards. Have you ever been inside a Soviet apartment? I have. You think, oh my God. Well, it's better than living in Blacktown. It's just really sad because the Russians have had it really bad for a really long time. This puts it all in perspective. You know who they regard as one of their better kings? This is their Gough Whitlam. Ivan the Terrible. Then they had this tiny little window after the collapse of the Soviet Union to build something that resembled a democracy, and then the US moved in and said, no, we're exporting freedom. The freedom for about 300 Americans linked to gas contracts to buy French yachts. That's why 3 million Russians died. It wasn't an accident. It was collateral damage in the US forcing their private companies into Russian territory. So Colbert can go on until he's blue in the face. Get it? Because he's a Democrat! But this is the difference in impact. The only effect that Russian hacking had on Stephen Colbert's life is that he got better ratings. If he was hosting a Russian show in the 90s, Stevanovich tonight if there's electricity, maybe. He's 55 now. In 2 years, he'd be dead! That's the difference in scale we're talking about. Russian intervention resulted in Stephen Colbert going, oh my God, how am I supposed to come up with comparisons to Donald Trump's hair for 4 years? But the US intervention in Russia resulted in Putin. So can we just compromise, Stephen, and say that the US isn't a force for good, it's a force for so good. Anyway, on that note of things that you're powerless to change, you have the power to press like. And make sure that you subscribe for more videos that are now just essentially one of those borderline homeless students handing out pamphlets on the promenade saying, end US imperialism, vote for me in the SRC. Well, Matt, did I change your mind?
Not really.
Yep. Didn't think so. You don't want to edit this, do you?
No.
Please share and comment below. Comment.